So you're interested in a play-by-post D&D campaign, or Pathfinder, or basically any other RPG. If you're not interested in play-by-post, then you're on the wrong video and you should go check something else out. First, I want to define what play-by-post is. Next, I want to tell you a little bit about the pros and cons, which you can actually see on my side over here if you don't want to listen to me talk. And then I also want to show you a few places where you can get started in play-by-post. So first, what is play-by-post, or PBP for short, as you'll see around the internet, that acronym? Play-by-post is an asynchronous form of play, meaning you post and then everybody else reads it whenever they want to and responds when they have the time. This is very different from everybody sitting around a table and all playing together, talking at the same time, and being together in one location. This can be accomplished through about any medium you can imagine, from email to private forums to Discord and other options that I'm going to detail a little bit later. The benefits of that, as I've got listed over here, are you don't have to schedule a play-by-post game. Once you pick the technology or format that you're going to use to play your game, you simply post, wait for everybody else to post, and then wait for the narrator to move the story forward. It's also location independent, meaning you don't all have to be in the same city, the same town, anything like that. One of my play-by-post players is on the other side of the world from me. Another one's in the same country as me, but many, many states away, and people are spread out all over the world that we've done play-by-post games with. So it's very cool. What that means is it opens up a larger pool of players and GMs or DMs that you are able to then play D&D with versus trying to find that local gaming group that you're going to sit down with every week. It's also writing or narrative focused. And what I mean by that is instead of everybody sitting around the table and just talking and telling what they're doing, it's all written word. I haven't seen any vocal, voice, or video only play-by-post games, but that would be kind of interesting. You just record a video snippet and share. I haven't seen anything like that yet. But it's very writing heavy because the narrator is going to write out what happens, what your characters see, what's going on, and then you write back what's happening. Some people might see this as a con. I love it as a short story writer, as somebody that enjoys the narrative and being able to be a little bit more descriptive with my actions. When you're all sitting around a table, you're kind of pressed for time. Nobody really wants to hear you take the time to say how you swing your sword and what you're thinking and what your character is doing. But in play-by-post, you're able to expound on that, and most people actually really like that extra depth because just like reading a novel, it's going to make the whole system and story more immersive for you and all of your fellow players. Also, this allows subplots and side quests to happen much easier. You can even run a side plot with just one character and the narrator at the same time as you're running the main narrative with everybody in it. This also makes it a lot easier to do what's called duet D&D or solo D&D, which is just a DM and a narrator. Oh, wait, just a DM and a player? That's actually how I started my very first play-by-post campaign in the world of Tullis, was just myself and one player, and we did that D&D duet as we started out. So if you can't find anybody and you just have one person, one of you can narrate, the other one can be a player, maybe you could switch, whatever, it makes that a lot easier because you're able to just kind of write out as much as you want. I'm going to jump down a couple bullet points there to talk about the next thing, which is that also allows you to play multiple characters. When I first started my game, it was just myself and just one PC that one character was playing, but then that character, that player, added a second character, and then I added a DM PC. That's for another video. Some people hate it, some people don't, but I needed bodies to be together because otherwise, 5 orcs up against one PC can be a little difficult. So again, it allows that one player to potentially control multiple characters, and instead of them having to switch in and out of dialogue or anything like that, they're able to just post as those different personalities. There's no voice acting or table awkwardness. If you're like me, if you're running the game, or even when you were playing as a player, to be your character and to try to get that whole immersion thing, we're not all Roll20 actors, right? We're not all voice actors and professional people that are able to create these accents and be super fun like that. And there's a lot of people that play D&D that have a lot of social anxiety. This removes that component because you can just write. You can take your time. If you aren't so eloquent with your words in the spoken format, you're able to think about what you want to say. You can put that together and then post whenever you're ready. Again, as the DM, as a narrator for running a game, it's also much easier because of that. I can go back and instead of taking copious amounts of notes, I'm able to reread the narrative as it happened in the game. So if I forget something, as opposed to me scrambling through my papers when I'm sitting in front of 5 or 6 people, I'm able to take my time, go back, look through my notes, read through, and I find that makes it a lot easier on me as the narrator to keep a good running game happening at the same time. And then also, you can be in multiple games simultaneously. I don't know about you, I've never tried to be in more than one D&D sit-down in-person group at the same time, but I imagine anybody that does that either has a lot of free time or an angry significant other. But this allows you to do that very easily, because in a play-by-post system, you can bebop in and out of those different games. You can post as the one character in one game, post as one in the other, and you can do that all in one time. Not on my list here is also my favorite aspect probably of play-by-post is that I get a little bit of D&D every single day. Normally, I play in daily posting games. We've been posting almost daily since 2017 in our Tollus campaign, and as opposed to playing D&D once a month, maybe once a week if you're super lucky, for somebody that's very, very busy and doesn't have a whole lot of free time, the ability to take a few minutes and write a post, sometimes a few every day, that is a lot more enjoyable for me to be able to get that little bit of D&D versus these big hunks of time. And again, on that scheduling, a play-by-post game doesn't get canceled unless everybody quits, basically. There's no game night to get canceled because you guys just post when you can. There are a few cons of play-by-post. You'll see those over here as well. It is considerably slower than in-person gaming. When you can accomplish a whole adventure in 4 hours sometimes in an in-person game, well, there is a much slower aspect to that when somebody writes a post. Just like writing an email, you don't expect an immediate response. It might take a few hours. Well, those few hours then stretch a whole narrative from just where you could accomplish it in 1 or 2 hours to now it's one post, wait a few hours, maybe wait a day before you get another one. So it's really easy to get frustrated with the slow gameplay, but if you go into it with the mindset of I'm going to get a little bit of D&D every day as opposed to a whole lot in a chunk, well, that's something that you just have to establish that expectation. This is neither a pro or con, but an idea for people. Let's say you're one of those lucky few that has an awesome, consistent, in-person gaming group. You can use play-by-post and do both of those games at the same time, meaning you could do a play-by-post component to your in-person game. Let's say you could handle side quests this way, or you could handle those off-time activities. You could do that in a play-by-post method, which would then allow you to make your in-person game even more action-packed. A con is also, depending on whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, that there's no in-person interactions with play-by-post gaming. So you don't get that fun, lively table chatter where everybody gets to talk about what's going on and have those fun inside jokes and stuff like that. That just doesn't develop because you're not all sitting together. Another issue is with a description where a narrator posts or even a character posts and says, this is what's happening and this is what I'm doing. When somebody reads that, they might interpret that completely differently than what you meant. And therefore, they might take an action or decide to do something that's not relevant or doesn't make any sense or even goes against what you're actually trying to accomplish simply because things can be read and interpreted a little bit differently. Maps help with this a lot. So whether you're using a Roll20 system or what other websites that's out there that you want to do a battle map, even a drawn map that you take a picture of, that visualization really helps. And that's true of in-person play as well for a lot of people. Also, you're dependent on technology for this system. Unless you're going to use carrier pigeons or written letters, I can't imagine how long that would take, you are dependent on some form of technology. I'll go through those options here in a little bit, but you're always going to have to use some form of technology to accomplish this campaign. Also, combat can be more difficult and extremely lengthy. If you think about the time that it takes to go around a play to say, I swing, I hit, I swing, I miss, I cast this spell, this happens, the bad guy goes, that could be a 5-minute interaction that 5-minute interaction in a play-by-post system could be 5 days. Because if each person just posts one action a day, then you can imagine how combats can be drawn out exceptionally long over a period of time. Again, sometimes people can make this into a hybrid system. We've never accomplished this in our play-by-post game that I've been running, but something that some people do is whenever you have a combat to resolve, you could all jump on Roll20 or jump on Fantasy Grounds, and you resolve the conflict. You have that time in person, which can be over video chat or something like that, and you can resolve the conflict much quicker that way. But again, the way that we've always done it is we post our actions, we check Roll20 to see what the map looks like, and then we move forward from there. It does take a little longer, but at the same time we get that little bit of D&D. Also, it can be hard to find dedicated people. If you have played in play-by-post before, if you've interacted on any of these websites, you've probably had a game that you were super excited about get started up and then collapse, fall apart, and everybody stops posting or the GM disappears, and that can be really, really frustrating. Again, if you have the expectation that it's kind of like a crapshoot, you're not sure which one of these games is going to last, well then it'll establish that in you where you know that might happen. So don't get too worked up about a game because there's a chance it might fall apart. But if you find some really good folks, even people that you know personally, that then maybe you guys all have kids or expensive or difficult jobs, or you're spread all over the country, or whatever the case may be, you can know those people and then get the game going. But if you're just trying to find them through some of the websites that I'll mention, it can be a little hectic and a little frustrating to see these games that you're excited about fall apart. Or if you're a narrator trying to create a game, to see your players just disappear. That can also be very, very frustrating. Some of the websites or technology methods that you can use. My favorite is rpol.net. I'll show you that here. So RPOL, which stands for Role Playing Online, is by far the best website that I have interacted. This is the website where we have run our Tollus game, which has over 7,700 posts here since 2017. I've experimented a little bit with trying to run a private forum, which is where I set up my own forum website, forum software through a web server, and then I run it that way. It doesn't have a lot of the features, and it gets kind of frustrating. Eventually, I'd like to have a play-by-post system on the ptol.us website, which is what you're seeing in the background here, but we're probably a little ways off from that. Reddit, there are actually quite a few play-by-post games that happen on Reddit. There's also a Reddit/PBP where you can find play-by-post games, and that allows you to scroll down through there and find them. I've also found that rpol.net probably has the largest community of people being involved in play-by-post. So if you want to create a game, find players, find a narrator, I've found it much easier, and I've tried most of these other websites. Mythweavers.com, gamersplane.com, ongoingworlds.com, RPG Crossing, and then I'll talk about Discord. This is interesting. I actually used Reddit to find a play-by-post game that happens on Discord. One great thing about Discord is the game that I've been playing in there and the ones that I've seen happening are much more fast-paced, but they're also much less in-depth. So with rpol.net, you can use it through your website, web browser, on your phone, tablet, whatever. They have a responsive version of it, which resizes to fit your phone. There's no notification system that pops up or emails or anything like that. That's one good thing about Discord, is that it'll pop up and you can see what people are doing, what's happening. And then again, we can resolve combat on another website or upload maps, whatever, that allows you to handle that. But again, it's usually much more short form because you're not writing these 6-paragraph answers or all this description. That's just what I've discovered. Then there's the Paizo Boards, and lastly, just a private forum, like I mentioned. There's lots of different forum software out there. If you, for some reason, want to run your own, or you're a programmer like me and you get a harebrained idea to try and develop your own, well, then that's another method that you can utilize, is basically setting up your own forum software. The biggest benefit to Discord, rpol.net, and some of the other ones that are dedicated websites that are focused on role-playing online and play-by-post systems and campaigns is also that they provide extra features. So I'm not going to go into all the details, but you have to think about, how are you going to do dice rolling? Are you going to do in-person and trust the people that are rolling? Are you going to use an online website that's hosted, that has a dice rolling system. Roll20 and Fantasy Grounds have dice rollers built in, so if you want to use that, you can have another. There's, I'm sure, hundreds of different online dice rolling systems that you can just trust them and say, hey, put it on here and say whatever you rolled. Or there's some also that are out there that have a log. Roleplay Online is normally what we use. RPOL.net is normally what we use for our dice rolling system. They've got a really robust dice roller. I can just jump in here and show you for a second. This is not an ad for them. It is a free website, and it's the one that I've always used. But you can see here they give you like a ton of different options on like how many dice you roll, what sided dice there is. You can do modifiers. If you're the narrator, you can also rig the roll and cheat. It allows you to select characters, and then something else is you can make up a character. So again, play around with these different technologies and figure out what's going to work best for you. I really, really enjoy play-by-post gaming. Again, I've been doing it since 2017. I love the aspect that I get just a little bit of D&D every single day. I do get a little frustrated sometimes with how slow the game can slow down to, just because, you know, you get that little bit every day, but then when you look at the span of a campaign over years, sometimes you don't accomplish nearly as much as what you're wanting to. But again, the trade-off for me, because I will not be able to do a sit-down game for a very long time until I have much older kids, then it's definitely a payoff for me. I do miss some of that in-person interaction, the times when we were younger where we got to play and laugh around the table and tell jokes and eat together and everything. That's really nice, but again, it's just not something that I can do right now because scheduling and everything, and a lot of people live like that as well. And then on top of that, there's a lot of fun that can be had with this when it comes to the writing. With the characters, we have 6 characters in the Tollus campaign, and we have offshoots for them where they can jump and go do something. We can have a month of game time pass where they're doing just offshoot stuff, side plots or whatever, and that's another really enjoyable thing because I feel like it fleshes out the characters a lot more and you're not so rushed. And then as a GM, I cannot see myself going back to playing in person because it is so much less stressful and it is so much easier to run a play-by-post campaign knowing I can sit, I can look at my notes, I can reference the stuff that's happened in the past, and it's just a lot easier and less stressful for me as a GM. So go check out Play-by-Post. There's a few other articles out there. There's not a lot, but check out the different websites. Figure out what you're interested in, which one of these works best for you. Ask some of your friends if you've got a D&D group. Ask them if they'd want to try this to just kind of dip your toe in. And you could even start off just emailing each other back and forth if you wanted to start that way, just to kind of start playing around with it. But it's been very rewarding for me. I'd love to see this part of the hobby see a resurgence and a growth, and hopefully get a lot more people involved in it, because the more people that are involved in the hobby, the better it's going to be for all of us. If you have any questions, if there's anything I didn't address, please post those in the comments below. I'll be happy to answer any of those, and if I need to make another video because I forgot something big, I'd be happy to do so. But again, as always, I try to answer every single one of those comments, so leave that down there and let me know what your thoughts are. If you like Play-by-Post, if you've played it, tell us about your experience. If you tried it and hated it, tell us that as well, because maybe there's something that we or other people can learn from that. Thank you very much, and happy gaming.